I want to know why. What is it that they're seeing that everyone else seems to be missing? One major prediction market has Haley as an underdog of more than 12-1. Even those odds seem generous maybe at this point. But the people donating to Nikki Haley right now didn't get where they are by lighting their cash on fire. It's been a busy 2-week swing for Haley on the fundraising circuit. She swept through New York, California, Texas, Florida, collected piles of cash at each stop along the way. During her 2-day stretch in California, she racked up $1.7 million at a series of big-ticket events, among Haley's best hauls of the entire campaign. That came on the heels of a massive New York City fundraiser co-hosted by Henry Kravis, one of the most prominent Wall Street titans of all time. Kravis supported Chris Christie and Tim Scott earlier in the campaign, but now he's all in on Nikki Haley. Tim Draper, a major Silicon Valley player, has become one of Haley's biggest backers, recently told Bloomberg he doesn't think her campaign's a lost cause.
She's gone from 2% of the vote to now 43% of the vote, and it's all up from here. All you have to do is put those two side by side, and you know that you've got to have Nikki Haley as your president. She is extraordinary. She has great gravitas. She is a delightful person.
But that's more of an argument why she should be president. Problem is, the cold, hard primary math appears stacked against her. According to an average of all recent polls from 538, Haley's on track to lose her home state next Saturday by a whopping 34 points. And the forecast looks just as grim for her in the Super Tuesday states on March 5th. A new series of polls shows Haley trailing Trump by more than 50 points in all but one of the 8 delegate Super Tuesday states. The lone exception is Massachusetts, where Haley's down by 41. That doesn't just look daunting, it looks insurmountable. And yet a bunch of savvy, smart business leaders don't see it that way. Why? Let's ask Eric Levin. He's a Nikki Haley fundraiser and donor. Thanks so much for coming on the program. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Happy to be here. Thanks.
All right, so why?
So why? Well, you talk about 12-1. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm delighted to say that spring training has started. And I remember in 1969, the Mets were 100-1 odds, and they won it all. So 12-1's nothing. Here's the bottom line. 70% of the American people don't want to see a Joe Biden-Donald Trump rematch. On one side, you have an unpopular, cognitively impaired, octogenarian with failing policies that he implements incompetently, and a vice president, even with all her faculties, who's less popular than he is. On the other side, you have a guy who's soon going to be an octogenarian with serious character issues, who says and does some very irresponsible and dangerous things, including June 6th and some of his most recent statements.
January 6th, yeah.
Sorry, January 6th, and some of his most recent statements about NATO. NATO has been the cornerstone of American foreign policy since the end of the Second World War, and he's talking about blowing it up.
So you've just made an argument as to why Nikki Haley should win in a general election. How does she win in the primary?
Okay. So a lot of things can happen between now and November. You were doing your little piece with about Fannie Willis.
Yeah.
I happen to agree with you. This idea of race is nonsense.
Yeah.
But putting that aside, he has a whole host of criminal problems. The stuff in New York is garbage. I mean, that's evidence of a two-tiered criminal justice system. But the January 6th, the January 6th prosecutions in D.C., those are real, and they may well lead to his conviction. Even 30% of voters in Iowa who voted for Trump in the caucus said they would not vote for him in a general election.
But let me ask you this. So here's a lot of people are saying now, if he's convicted, that'll change my view, right?
Correct.
I don't know if I believe them, right? Because let's say he's convicted and, you know, he says it's going to appeal, et cetera. And he makes the argument that it's a biased, liberal D.C. jury. Of course they convicted. Of course they got it wrong. The judge had it out for me from day one. But everyone knows if he's elected, he's going to figure out a way to make these cases go away. So I don't know that even the people who are saying they will change their view if he's convicted actually mean it.
Well, you're conflating two different things. When you said if he's elected, the goal is to not get him elected.
I understand that.
Right?
I understand that.
Okay. You have roughly 30% of the country is Republican, roughly 30% of the country is Democrat, and roughly 30% of the country is independent. And if the 30% Republicans who show up to vote in primaries, that's maybe 20% of that. So that's a really small sliver. People should be looking at what happened in New York yesterday in the special election in New York 3. Suozzi won by 8 points.
The Democrat.
Democrat, beating Phillips. 2 years ago, Santos won by 8 points. That's a 16-point swing. 2 years before that, when Trump was on the ballot, Suozzi won. What's the lesson? When Trump's on the ballot, we lose. When Trump is off the ballot, we win.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.